With one of the most iconic saxophone hooks in rock music history, Gerry Rafferty's Baker Street propelled the Scottish singer-songwriter into international stardom. A level of fame which the introverted musician quickly rejected. Today, we're talking about Gerry Rafferty and the story behind his hit single, Baker Street.
Winding your way down on Baker Street.
Hello there, it's Warren Hewitt. Hope you're doing marvellously well. Welcome back to another episode in the series. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe down below. And of course, if you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified when we have a new video. And if you're into production, you can go to producelikeapro.com, sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. In 1978, Gerry Rafferty released his solo album City to City. His first release since the breakup of the band Stealers Wheel in 1975, and his first solo release in 6 years. The lead single from the album Baker Street became a huge success, peaking at the number 2 spot in the US for several weeks. Gerry Rafferty was born in Scotland in 1947, in the town of Paisley, 10 minutes outside of Glasgow. His first introduction to music was through Scottish and Irish folk songs that his mother would sing him, and the music of Catholic Mass. It was in church music where he discovered the concept harmony and soon after picked up the guitar to teach himself how to play. As a teenager, he discovered American folk music and rock and roll, listening to the Beatles, Bob Dylan, the Everly Brothers and the band. In 1969, Gerry joined future comedian Billy Connolly's Scottish folk group, the Humble Bums. They released 2 albums together, The New Humble Bums and Open Up the Door. Connolly recalled being totally blown away by Rafferty's songwriting abilities, comparing his talent to that of Paul McCartney.
Gerry came up to me after the concert and said, God, that was funny and I liked your stuff and blah, blah, blah. I'm a songwriter myself, and I thought, oh, God, another one. You know, you were constantly being approached by songwriters in the folk scene, and it was all about rain running down the window and how I miss you, you know. Went up for a few beers to his house, and he played the songs, and I thought, who's this guy kidding? He's learned these from a record or something. He never wrote these. It was like Paul McCartney coming up and saying, I write songs, you know, would you like to hear one? Yesterday... What?
After the duo broke up in 1971, Rafferty signed with Transatlantic and released his first solo album, Can I Have My Money Back? The following year, he teamed up with childhood schoolmate Joe Egan to form Stealers Wheel. The group recorded 3 albums, working with legendary songwriters and producers Jerry Lieber and Mike Stoller. Although their single Stuck in the Middle with You hit number 8 on the UK singles charts and number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100, Rafferty and Egan and the famed producers struggled to find themselves in the same place in terms of their creative process. Rafferty told Rolling Stone in 1978, "The problems we had little to do actually with the results that we got on the board, because they were great in terms of sound and all of that. But they were old school producers. That means you're there dead on 2 o'clock. You have a coffee break at exactly 5 o'clock, and then you finish at 8 o'clock on the dot. And you don't go over regardless of whatever you're doing." There was this generation gap and culture gap too. Rafferty and Stealers Wheel struggled through a messy breakup in 1975, which would actually inspire the meaning behind the song Baker Street. After Stealers Wheel ended, Rafferty found himself entangled in a series of legal conflicts. Everybody was suing each other, so I spent a lot of time on the overnight train from Glasgow to London for meetings with lawyers. I knew a guy that lived in a little flat off Baker Street. We'd sit and chat or play guitar there through the night. In his lyrics, Rafferty sings about disillusionment with the music industry and the fast-paced lifestyle that seems to come with it. He dreams of escaping outside of the city desert to find a more peaceful way of life. He's got this dream about buying some land. He's gonna give up on the booze and the one-night stands, and then he'll settle down in some quiet town and forget about everything. These lyrics were inspired by real-life experiences. You don't need to be a rock star to connect with them. Part of the magic of this song is its haunting ability to hit right at the heart of burnout and frustration, something that most of us can relate to at least at some point in our lives. While the lyrics and vocals are a huge part of what makes Baker Street so cool, the iconic saxophone line is undoubtedly the heart of the song. The saxophone part on the record is performed by Raphael Ravenscroft, known as Raff Ravenscroft, whose expressive and emotional playing made the 8-bar riff one of the most famous saxophone lines in music history. There's been some controversy about the part. However, Rafferty is listed as the sole author of the song, but Ravenscroft claimed to have authored the saxophone solo's melody, filling in the empty gaps of Rafferty's song. Ultimately, that claim was refuted in 2011 when a demo recording of the song, recorded prior to Ravenscroft joining the sessions, was released. In the demo, the saxophone melody is clearly present and fully formed, only Rafferty is playing it on a guitar. Let's listen to the demo now. While it's clear that Rafferty had authored the iconic melody, finding exactly the right notes for the song, it's also true that Ravenscroft's playing is a huge reason for the track's success. After the song's phenomenal success, Ravenscroft's career really took off and he went on to work with huge artists like Pink Floyd, Marvin Gaye and ABBA. His performance is also credited for inspiring the Baker Street phenomenon, in which saxophone suddenly became a staple of bands in the 80s, and sales for saxophones experienced its largest boom since the 1920s. For more on how this iconic saxophone part works, let's turn over to our friend David Rolicky.
Thank you for inviting me to the discussion about the song Baker Street. My job is to talk about the saxophone. He played an alto, like what I'm holding here. He had a pretty aggressive mouthpiece, which means there's a baffle inside there that makes the EQ much brighter than, let's say, a jazz mouthpiece. And you sure can tell because that melody cuts through. It's the first thing you hear. The tone is bright. It's lathered in reverb. It just sounds like you're on a rocket ship going out to space. And then the song suddenly turns into a yacht rock jam and then takes you back out into space again. A strange song, and it's great that pop music can have a strange moment like Baker Street and have so many people resonate to it. It doesn't make sense, but it doesn't need to. What can I say? There's other saxophone playing going on in the 70s. The great Clarence Clemons and the E Street Band just playing the most beautiful, soaring melodies. And like Jungle Land, you have saxophone rocking out and T-Rex and Bang a Gong. You have, the smoky, sexy sound and Lou Reed's Wild Side at the end with the baritone sax. So you've got saxophone in the 70s. It's not like it was gone. But Baker Street, I think, maybe ushered in that kind of brighter, reverby sound that became popular in the 80s and gave a bunch of sax players work, which we like. And let me see if I can, play you a convincing version. It's a pentatonic scale. What's most important is that Raphael delivers in his performance and, he sells the song. Something like that. I think the ending might be a little different. Every time Raphael plays it, it's slightly different in the song. So there you have it. The rest is pop music history. Thank you. Enjoy.
Baker Street also features a phenomenal guitar solo, played by Hugh Burns, who would go on to record 6 albums with Rafferty and tour with him over the course of his career. City to City was their first project together. In 1978, Burns was performing with Jack Bruce and was in London for a gig when he visited the studio where Rafferty was recording City to City. He recalled, "I went to the studio after I played the gig, and I think one of the first songs we played was Baker Street. And I said, this is fantastic. This is a great song. So let's break down a little bit of that incredible guitar solo. It's one of my favourites with our good friend, Mr. Jamie Humphries.
Hi guys, Jamie here, and Warren has asked me today to have a look at some of the key guitar parts from the Gerry Rafferty track, Baker Street. Now this was originally recorded with Nigel Jenkins on rhythm guitar and Hugh Burns on lead guitar. So what we're going to do is take a look at a couple of what I think are key rhythm guitar parts as well as that fantastic guitar solo. Let's first of all take a look at the introduction, and I think this is a great example of how alternative root notes can really change the sound of triad chords, and they can really affect the way that a progression works. The introduction is based around a series of triads with different root notes, and there's one live video of Gerry Rafferty playing rhythm guitar where he's using these voicings. We have a G triad with an A, so it's a G over A. We have an E flat triad, but it has an F in the bass. And we have an F triad with a G in the bass. Obviously, I'm just playing those notes there just to give you an example of how the two sound, as I don't have a bass player with me. But on the video, when you see Gerry Rafferty play it, he's simply playing. Now, listening to the original recording, I kept hearing different things, and the guitar is pretty buried in there. But during the second time that we hear the introduction, the guitar kind of leapt out at me. So I slowed it right down to really pick out the notes. And it turned out that it was like a D sus2 movable shape. So we're playing a G sus2 to an E flat sus2. You could always hear the root note that's being played by the bass appearing on the top of the chords. You get this. Obviously, we're on the original recording, you're not going to hear that low root note that I'm putting in there. And it's just a real kind of gentle brush across the chord. Sometimes only just the top three strings. Now let's look at the rhythm guitar part that you can hear underneath that iconic saxophone melody. And for this, you're going to need a bottleneck, as we have this sliding, it's like a C power chord, if you like, on the D and the G strings at the 17th fret. We're just sliding that away and sliding into each chord from the progression. So let's have a listen. You're literally just playing 17 on the D and the G strings, sliding away, and we're sliding into a D chord. It's like a mild overdrive on the guitar sound. It sounds like it's a Strat to me. So one more time. Then we do that slide again into a C, an A sus4, and into a G. Now, there is a verse rhythm guitar part that just features some very kind of mild, choppy chords, but I thought it was much more important for us to take a look at the guitar solo. Okay, so as you can see, there's some pretty hairy string bends going on with this track. We're starting off, we've got this little sliding figure, which is that instantly recognizable lick from the beginning of the solo. And then that's followed by another blues lick. I like this blues lick. I love the phrasing and the way he kind of pre-bends and releases the note. Okay, now this is the difficult lick, and this was a lick that I spent a long time looking at. I looked at the positions that he was playing it in the music video and decided it wasn't sort of played in that classic kind of shape one position for the minor pentatonic. And the thing here that I found was, you could start off with a bend. And then from that note there, we've got to bend all the way up to an A note. Now, at first, I was changing position going up to that G note. So going... But on the recording, I couldn't hear any evidence of a position shift, and it was so smooth that all I could come up with was that sort of thought that it was maybe inspired by Jeff Beck, you know, with some of those real big 2 whole tone bends. So that phrase is going like this. Now, I've got 10 to 52s on this guitar, so it is quite hard to get the pitch of those bends, but it's really good for working on your pitch accuracy. Then we're back to that opening phrase again. So this next lick is one of my favorite licks out of the whole track. I think it's got a great groove to it. So let's have a listen. It's a really slick pentatonic lick based around pattern number 1 of the D minor pentatonic. So then we're back up to the 20th fret, and Hugh demonstrates more of his string bending prowess and control. And we've got some pre-bends in there and some semitone bends. And then we finish off with this little pentatonic run there. Now, I'm sure that there is a little slide on the end. The solo kind of fades out. So I've added that. I can hear that note jumping out, but it kind of makes a nice little bookend for the end of the solo if you go to play it anyway.
While Burns played the lead guitar part, Nigel Jenkins was responsible for rhythm guitar on the track. Graham Prescott, known for his work with Tom Jones, Deep Purple, Cher, Paul McCartney, John Bon Jovi, and film composers like Hans Zimmer and John Williams provided the string arrangements. Also playing on the record are several important session players, including keyboardist Tommy Eyre and drummer Henry Spinetti. Glenn DeFleur provided the percussion. Eyre was an English musician who played in Joe Cocker's Grease Band in 1968, including providing the organ part on Joe Cocker's iconic cover of With a Little Help from My Friends. He provided the opening, synth line and other keyboard parts on Baker Street. Spinetti has an impressive list of credits to his name, including playing with Joan Armatrading, Eric Clapton, Roger Daltrey, Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Bonnie Tyler, Bill Wyman, Pete Townsend and Ronnie Lane, to just name a few. Spinetti and Baker Street bassist Gary Taylor also played in The Herd, with Peter Frampton working together on City to City. Gary Taylor also played with Rafferty on his first album, as well as working with him on Stealers Wheel.
Barry Hammond engineered the record with an illustrious career that included bands like Radiohead and XTC, Proclaimers, Bo Diddley, Linda Thompson, and many, many others.
Baker Street and the City to City album was recorded at Chipping Norton Recording Studio in Oxfordshire, in England. The studio was built out of a former schoolhouse and recorded several well-known bands and artists, including Steve Winwood, Jack Bruce, Duran Duran, Judas Priest, and Rafferty's close friend Barbara Dixon. Radiohead's hit track Creep was also recorded at Chipping Norton. In 1977, the same year that Rafferty came in to record City to City, the studio upgraded its facilities, bringing in American acoustician John Storick to redesign the space. It housed an MCI JH100 24-track recorder and a Trident A-range mixer. As the lyrics to Baker Street reveal, Rafferty was a deeply introspective and introverted man. Music for him was best expressed through the recording studio rather than the stage. Longtime friend Barbara Dixon explained,
"He's always liked being in the studio. He's happier in studios than he is in front of the public. He doesn't like people looking at him."
Baker Street and the whole City to City album was co-produced by Rafferty and Hugh Murphy. The pair would go on to work together many times over the next 30 years, including remixing and co-producing the Proclaimers single Letters from America. City to City was released on January the 20th, 1978, and the single Baker Street followed 2 weeks later on February the 3rd. The single shot up the charts, peaking at number 2 for 6 weeks, stuck behind Andy Gibbs' Shadow Dancing. It spent 4 weeks in the number 1 spot in Canada and also the top of the charts in Australia and South Africa. In the UK, the song peaked at number 3. While the song catapulted Rafferty rapidly and unexpectedly into international fame, Rafferty pulled away from the spotlight, cancelling his American tour and making few public appearances. When he did make them, his comments were brief and humble. We can see him here receiving the Best Single Award for Baker Street at the 1978 British Rock and Pop Awards.
Congratulations, Gerry.
Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. How do you feel at this particular moment?
Absolutely wonderful. Yes.
Terrific.
You've got to take it. There you go. Congratulations.
Okay. Thank you. Let's go.
Rafferty told Rolling Stone that after the tour's cancellation, to be a star, in inverted commas. That is probably the last thing I want. What I want is to just develop in terms of my songs. After Baker Street and City to City, Gerry Rafferty went on to release 7 more solo albums and continued working on an eclectic array of projects, taking on the music industry on his own terms. In 2011, Rafferty passed away from liver failure after a long battle with alcoholism. After his death, the music world was flooded with tributes and honours, revealing the profound influence he had with Baker Street and his entire body of work on generations of musicians afterwards. Thank you ever so much for watching. If you haven't already, please check out the other videos in this series. Subscribe if you haven't, and thank you ever so much for watching. Have a marvellous time. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, adio, goodbye.